My girlfriend, when I met her, she told me that flowers are not a gift; they are an obligation. Why you waste so much time? I can say directly. But on the other hand, with my family, sometimes I say directly what I want, and I have answers like, first of all, good morning.
I tried to reason with Austrian authorities to say, like, look, what am I supposed to do? I don't have another flight. And their response was, this is the regulation. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dating Beyond Borders podcast. So today's guest is a polyglot from Sao Paulo, Brazil, who speaks 7+ languages, has lived in 3 European countries, and is currently based in Poland, and is in a relationship with a Slavic woman. I'm very excited to welcome Eliseu to the podcast to talk about how language shapes who we are and the way we connect with one another, the cultural differences he has noticed while moving countries, and what it's like dating someone from a completely different culture.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. So, hello, everyone who's listening. I'm actually a big fan of the channel and the podcast. So, for me, it's a big pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. That means a lot. I'm actually very excited to talk to you. You've done it all. So you speak the languages. You're in an intercultural relationship. You've lived all around Europe, and you're from Brazil, which is worlds away from the countries that you've lived in. So why this fascination with Europe? I'm assuming you had a fascination with Europe, or what pulled you to Europe in the first place?
Wow, yeah, that's actually very interesting because I think I realized myself that I maybe my approach is very Eurocentric just last year. That's why I started learning Mandarin Chinese. But everything started when I was a child because also I have immigration background in my family, so I have Italian and Portuguese backgrounds, also native Brazilian, but I had half of my family was Portuguese and part was Italian. So I had the stories of them, like how they migrated, why they migrated, the challenges in Brazil, and maybe not so typical Brazilian families. Like on Sundays, we are going to the house of my grandma, which was Italian, to eat Italian food with all the cousins, like usually Italians do. And when I was, I think, 12 or 11, one of my best friends from childhood, his mother married an Austrian man, and they moved to Vienna, and we still kept in touch, and he was telling me about how was life there. He was inviting me to go, and when I finished school I decided to learn German and go for the first time. So first I went to Germany, then I went to Austria, and I was simply in love. When I arrived in Europe for the first time, I had this cultural shock. It looked like a different planet, and my first feeling was I wanna live here. I want to see how life is here, because I always heard before people saying, every country has issues, it's similar everywhere. But when I arrived here, I said, wow, it's so different. Like so many things that we do not have there, we have here, things that I appreciate. So I would like to try to live here. So since then, I made my plan to come to Europe, to move to Europe, and yeah, I've been here.
So the first country you went to, was it Austria or Germany?
First was Germany, started learning German, and then I went to Austria.
So you mentioned that you were kind of pleasantly surprised by all the things that seemed to be potentially functioning better or working better. What were those things that surprised you in a good way?
Yeah, I think number one, from far away, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I feel for most of Brazilians, security is the top one factor why that we are surprised. We are not used to not think all the time about security, and it took a while for me to realize. And when I realized, I was very surprised that, oh, I don't need to be watching around the street all the time, to be caring all the time about where I go and who is around me. And when I realized that, I noticed that this feeling is really good. And for me, this was one thing that surprised me a lot. Also, how public transport works so well. It made me very independent, not only inside one city, but to go around to different cities. Or you have this low cost airlines, you can fly around Europe really easily. While in Brazil, we don't have that opportunity. It's still, flying in Brazil is not that cheap. And so many things, I felt really independent here. Like European Union is half of the size of Brazil, but when it comes to culture, you have so much diversity. And I remember when I visit my friend for the first time, my I think the biggest cultural shock was in Vienna. All his friends, they were all from different countries. They were all speaking German, but you had this multicultural talk all the time. How to say this in your language? Or the jokes about the stereotypes. I had never seen that in Brazil. We don't have this so much um, diversity as I've seen there. So yeah, I fell in love in that moment. I had never seen that before.
Yeah, that's very interesting when you talk about the safety because it's not something I've ever had to really think about. I mean, I'm in Mexico now, so maybe in the more safe part of Mexico. But when you talk about safety, I started thinking about it, like really, really thinking about it. And I've definitely heard stories about in Sao Paulo, like when you take a car and on the red light, you should be careful because sometimes people can just come in and with a gun. Does that actually happen?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I had the feeling that we Brazilians we exaggerate a little bit about how dangerous Brazil is, or we exaggerate about other Brazilian cities. Like if you ask someone from São Paulo about Rio, they will talk about Rio as if it was the most dangerous place in Earth. I feel it's a little bit exaggerated, but still is dangerous. And everyone knows someone who has been through situations like that. So we try to be careful all the time. And this feeling that you are paying attention, you are careful all the time, you don't relax. And it's even if, for example, I have never been robbed in Brazil, but I had this feeling all the time. I've been to Brazil, I think once since I moved to Poland, like some months ago, and I still had this feeling, walking around, checking everything, seeing who's around. If you need to stop, as you said, if stop under the red light, you need to be careful. Is there anyone, a car coming? And maybe you don't stop. It's so many things to think about.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the stuff we take for granted in a lot of the countries like Canada. I mean, people complain that it's very boring, but we don't think about the safety concerns because yeah, you have to plan differently. You can't wear a lot of things. You're like, no, no, I shouldn't be wearing expensive jewelry. Don't take stuff out. Like, watch it. So yeah, I can see that. And so you went to Austria first, and how long did you stay in Austria? Oh, you said Germany. Germany. You
Germany.
went to
I
first.
went to Germany first to learn German. So my goal was to learn my first foreign language was German. So I stayed there for 2 months. I lived with a host family, and I visited my friend in Austria twice when I was there. And yeah, and after these 2 months, I came back to Brazil, and it was hard to be back to Brazil after seeing this different reality.
Why was it so hard?
Because many things that I appreciated and I wanted to have, I didn't in my life. I didn't feel so independent. Like I don't like driving, for example. And in Brazil, we you life is much more comfortable when you drive. Like you must drive if actually in many circumstances. So I didn't. I feel a little bit dependent on. Also, to go out and come back when I want and feel safe, all these feelings that I had in Europe that I didn't have in Brazil. When I came back to Brazil, was a little bit hard to get used again.
So you stayed in Brazil for how long before you went back to
Ooh,
Europe?
after that, for 1 year. So 1 year later, I went to Italy.
Mm. And how long did you stay in Italy?
The same. I went for a project. Was when I started my first experience with languages. Was teaching English and Spanish in a high school. I was living with a host family, and I stayed there for 2 months. And after that, I went to Austria for another 2 months.
Okay. And then after Austria is when you decided to move to Poland, correct?
Yeah, no. After Austria, I went to Brazil and I made the plan. Like I wanna come back to. I came back to Brazil. I made a plan to live in Austria. So I went to. I had met a girl there. So I'm after I came back to Brazil. I organized my things and I went to live in Austria with her. And I spent there in Austria a year. And yeah, then I moved back to Brazil. I was working as a language teacher, and I mean, summarizing the story, I got interested in Poland because my first girlfriend was from Poland. So I was visiting Poland, and when I met my second girlfriend, that was Polish again, and she we tried to live in Austria together. She didn't like, so we decided to move to Poland.
And how long have you been in Poland now?
Well, three and a half years.
Wow. Okay. So you have an interesting story because you just like you did short term European adventures, then you go back, and then so you always felt kind of a pull towards Europe, and not even Southern Europe, but it looks like even more like the colder places of Europe.
Yes, but in the beginning, I didn't have documents to live in Europe. So when I came here for the first time, I I just came here to learn German for 2 months. I didn't expect that I would fall in love with everything I had seen here and that I wanted to stay. And but I didn't have documents, so it was when the moment when I talked with my family and my aunt gave me the documents of my grandpa. She said, "Look, if you want, you can request your Portuguese citizenship. Here you have the documents." So I started to save money to have this possibility, and I've done that some years later, and then I could live here, and life became much easier.
So I have a question for you. Why not choose a place like Portugal or Italy, which is maybe more closer to the Brazilian temperament? Why choose places like Germany, Austria, Poland?
hmm I feel as for this reason because it was more different. I had more to learn, and that's actually the feeling I have in Poland. That life in Poland for me is not easy. I feel that I'm always out of my comfort zone, but in the same time, I'm feeling that I'm growing out of my comfort zone because I need to learn new things. I need to try to see life how they see. In Germany, it was the same. In Austria, the same. While in Italy, I didn't feel like a big cultural shock. I felt very home there. I felt people really similar. I didn't remember that because here, especially with Slavic people, sometimes I think a lot about is this okay if I do this or if I say this? How do they see it? But in Italy, I had never had these thoughts. I was just myself all the time, and everything was okay. I didn't have so many cultural shocks.
Yeah, interesting. So you actually like being challenged.
Yeah, I like that. Also, I like to experience different cultures and to see how they see life. How because in Italy, from one way, it reminds me too much of Brazil sometimes. And it's good to go there to see people, but it looks very much like Brazil, especially the relationships between people. And here, no, I'm learning something new every day
So Austria, you lived in Vienna, or where did you live?
in Vienna.
So Vienna, I talk about this a lot, I suppose. So maybe you do know. It's considered one of the least friendly cities in the world now. It was just voted recently. So what did you think about it? What was it like making friends in Vienna?
I haven't made any Austrian friend in my time in Vienna, and I think in comparison with Germany, I think in Germany it was a little bit of my mistake because I didn't know how to. I would do things differently, but in Vienna, I feel that even my friends that have been living there for such a long time, they don't have Austrian friends. And I feel that the society is a little bit divided in that sense. Foreigners are usually with foreigners, and it's a little bit hard to get into the Austrian groups. They have the same friends that they had in high school, for example. Unless if you find a way, maybe if you make the first friend, then it becomes easier. But until you make this first friend, I think it can be very challenging. In Vienna, I feel that maybe in other cities in Austria, it's very different. And Austria as well. I think in Vienna, half of the population is was born in another country or was born in Vienna, but the parents are from other countries. So when you arrive there, I think it's easier to connect with foreigners than with Austrians because they understand a little bit better your challenges, and you get into this comfort zone. And I felt like was a little bit of a mistake from my side because I could improve my German so much. I could understand so much the Austrian mentality. I still don't understand. I was always around Latinos there.
So you went to Austria and then you're basically hanging around with
Yeah,
the same people.
Latinos and Slavs. Yeah.
So Slavs at the same time you connect a little bit easier with, right? There's some similarities.
Yes, I feel that because in Vienna, especially, there are a lot of people from the Balkans, and I find them really similar to us. I find them like half Slavs, half Latinos. They're similar to us in many ways, and it was really easy to connect with them. They had similar interests, like sports. Was easy to talk to them. They are more open. So I made a lot of friends from Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro there. And it helped a lot back then as well. And there are a lot of Polish people as well. With Slavs, it became a little bit easier. Also, because we have this feeling that immigrants understand immigrants. You understand the struggles, while sometimes locals don't. They don't know the things that you go through, or they have never been through these situations. But yeah, this is kind of hard in Austria. While in Germany, I feel that if you do things in the right way, you can make German friends. It's not that hard, I believe, in my opinion, according to my experience.
That's something that I've heard as well. It's interesting that you mentioned Balkans because I agree with you. I think Balkans are like an interesting mix of like Eastern European directness with very passionate, like almost Latin kind of feeling to them. They're very soulful and they're very passionate, and so it's like a mix of both worlds. But it's also interesting that you mentioned it's easy to become friends with people that are away from home because you have that common like understanding. Because I've made friends with Germans outside of Germany very easily, but as soon as I go to Germany, it becomes harder because they're in their comfort zone. And in general, even like going to Sweden and talking to Swedes that have lived abroad in Italy, they're no longer 100% Swedish. Like they're a little bit mix of that country that they've lived in. And so they find it really hard to connect with Swedes. And it's just like a common pattern I find for why it's easier to hang out with non-locals. Like in every single country, I think that you go to, that seems to be the case. But Poland, Poland, um, must not have been very easy for you, right, to move to?
Yeah, exactly what you were saying. That I feel that Poland has been the hardest country to make people understand cultural differences. I think that they are still not very used to different cultures, especially from different continent. And sometimes when you do something, they don't have this feeling or these thoughts. Oh, maybe he's from a different culture, and that's why he did like that. So they don't put themselves on your shoes because sometimes they don't understand. And this is a little bit complicated. They are not used to foreigners, and this was in Austria. On the other hand, in the daily life, they know how to deal with foreigners. They are used to foreigners. They know how to adapt the language to talk to foreigners. But in Poland, no. And this was really hard in the beginning. But because what I consider a mistake that I made in Austria, I try to do everything different in Poland. I arrived here and I decided to learn Polish, to understand the culture, to do things in a completely different way because I didn't want to have the same experience. I wanted to get to know Polish people, see life how they see, learn the language, connect with them. And I felt that even after some time, I could already see the results of them because they really appreciate when you show that you know and you are interested in their culture. And then things started to get a little bit easier, but it's slow. I feel that with Polish people, everything is slow when it comes to personal relations.
You live in Krakow, right?
No, in Warsaw.
In Warsaw. Oh, and I was
Yeah,
there, and we could have met. I was
yeah.
I was there in the
Unfortunately,
summer.
I saw it just later.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah, I find Polish people are interesting. If you don't know the culture very well, you don't understand the mentality, it could be really tough because they don't really come off very friendly. Like, I feel like they're polar opposite to Brazilians in the fact that Brazilians are very warm and right off the bat, you feel like you can talk to them. And Polish people are yeah, it's in kind of, I don't want to say Eastern European because they'll kill me because they're Central European. Sorry, Polish people,
Yes.
but
No.
I want to say the Eastern because if I say Central European, you will also have Austria that's also Central Europe, and I find that's very different culturally.
Yeah.
But they have this kind of like reserved, really almost like they don't trust people. They have this really stiff demeanor, but that's just kind of for me. Poland actually was not a culture shock when I arrived, but it was hard, especially doing interviews on the streets. Even though I came from Scandinavia I found easier to connect with people than Poland, so that was really interesting. But was it hard to make friends? Have you made any Polish friends actually?
Yes, but like you mentioned, this very international friends. My Polish friends, they are very international. That sometimes I feel that for them, for some of them, it's hard to connect with Poles. Especially they don't date. Most of them don't date Poles, for example. They don't like, and they're very international. The people, like, I forget that they are from a specific country. So this is hard. But it's hard. Like when you want to get the culture, you have international friends. Is also part of your comfort zone, right?
Mm.
But what you mentioned, yeah, it's true. I feel that they have this feeling that they do not trust, and sometimes it's funny for a Brazilian because I remember arriving here and at work my first week, I had questions like, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes, but if it's too personal, you don't need to reply." Okay, I said, "Okay." And the question is, "Why did you move to Poland?" And in my mind as a Brazilian, like, how is it personal?
Mm.
And I couldn't understand. And I noticed that I remember also once I had a situation that I needed help and no one was offering me help. And I arrived at work and I asked them, why people don't help? And I remember someone gave me an explanation that because we feel that we are afraid of invading our space. So if you do not ask for help, we will not do it because we don't want to invade your space. We don't want to be uncomfortable. And it's the opposite of Brazilian culture, and these things took a while for me to understand and to realize how to deal with them, that I needed to do everything more in a more proactive way with Poles, um, to show that, oh look, I need help, I want to know this, I need to ask questions to show them that I'm interested. And it's completely the opposite of Brazilian culture. That's why I say that I live here 100% out of my comfort zone, because when it comes to communication is the opposite. I feel, I remember in the beginning I feel that no one at work liked me, and I had this feeling. I even talked to some people. I couldn't understand why, and why they were behaving the way they were after work. They were not talking to me, but this same people, after 1 year, 1.5 year, they were like different people to me. They showed a side of them that I didn't know, but it took time. But for a Brazilian, it's a little bit hard to understand that it can take so long, because 1 year for us is extremely long to start talking about personal life, to maybe go to meet the partner of the person, this kind of things. For like, I understand that I needed time with them, that I need to respect their time, that is completely different than the time that I'm used to, the speed of how everything works, of displaying personal information. So if you ask some personal information, they are, why do you want to know it? And for Brazil, like, I just meet you and I'm talking about my personal life, and they don't have, they most of them, they don't understand that, unless if someone who is very international, like I mentioned. And another cultural shock for me as well is how Poles are clean. I think in comparison with Brazilians, they're extremely clean. Like Warsaw is one of the cleanest cities I've ever been to. And Poles at home, they are very organized. I think Slavic people in general. And this is very impressive for me. I learned a lot with them when it comes to this. So yeah, I feel that these things were very different for me. It took a while for me to understand, but I can say that my experience started to improve when I started to speak Polish. Then I saw another world in Poland that I couldn't see when I moved here.
What was the difference?
I feel that most of people, they felt more comfortable because most of Poles in Poland, they are not used to speak English. So even if they speak English well at work, they are not used to speak English on a daily basis. So when you started to speak Polish, they feel much more comfortable with you. So they start joking, they start telling things like in a funny way. That you say, "Wow, it's the same person," but and then you just notice that they are not used to use a foreign language. Maybe at work, yes, but when it comes to other things, no. And my experience has started to improve a lot. And of course, it's hard to speak Polish with them because, as I said, they are not used to speak Polish with foreigners. Sometimes they look at me and they assume that I don't speak Polish, and they speak to me in English. I reply in Polish. They speak in English. I reply in Polish, and it's a never-ending story. But when they really see that you can speak Polish well, they appreciate it. They say, "Wow, you speak Polish well. How long have you been here?" And they get interested in that. And for me, this is a good icebreaker when it comes to Poland. For me, it has always worked. When they see that my Polish is good, definitely the experience is different.
So, how many languages do you speak more or less fluently? It was seven you said that you're going to focus on now, right?
Yeah, nowadays I focus on 7 languages, but for example, I had a situation on stand up because I made a joke in Ukrainian, and someone asked me, "Do you speak Ukrainian?" And I started speaking Ukrainian, but it had been like a long time since I haven't spoken Ukrainian or Belarusian, for example. So I would say that I can speak in 12 languages, but I'm focusing on 7 nowadays.
And which are those?
The 7 are Portuguese, Spanish, Spanish. No, I dropped Spanish. So Portuguese, Italian, English, French, German, Polish, Russian, uh, and I'm Mandarin as well. That's the one language that I've been learning, and I think these are the 7. I think I mentioned all of them.
So, do you feel like knowing all these languages has that changed you, or kind of the way you see the world, connect with people?
Yeah, it's 100%. Because when you learn the language, you don't learn only the language. So you need to learn the culture, and you need to learn how people communicate in this culture. And every time I see something that I like, I try to implement in my life. So I really like how Slavs are direct. And I had a little bit of issue with that in Brazil now, because for Brazilians I was a little bit rude most of the time. But for me, this how efficient it is to talk like in the way that Slavs talk. I really like that, to not waste time, because Brazilians, you probably know that they will send you hi, and then you will say hi, and they will say how are you, and you say I'm doing well, and you I'm doing well, and then they say what they want to say. And for me, like, why you waste so much time? I can say directly. But on the other hand, with my family, sometimes I say directly what I want, and I have answers like, first of all, good morning, like, and it's hard because I forgot how to behave with Brazilians, because this is an aspect that I took from Slavic culture that I really liked. Or in Germany and Austria, I learned how to be very organized, especially when it comes to time. Because I always saw my friends saying, "Oh, there will be the train at this time, so you can arrive in your home at this time." And they knew everything about that. So I started also to calculate like that. Nowadays, I do a lot of stuff. I have 2 podcasts. I teach. I have a job in a bank. I do stand-up comedy. So I need to organize my life. So this is a very useful skill I learned in Germany and in Austria. And of course, I feel that the best way of learning that is experiencing it through the language, through interactions with people.
Yeah, I really love that you had mentioned the difference in communication, because this is like low context versus high context, right? Like Brazil is very high context. So, um, and of course we have Poland, which is in Germany and Austria. That's low context, very direct, very to the point. What you've just mentioned is something that I struggle with so much. So I had a Venezuelan assistant, and I'm very direct. I'm very low context. So when it comes to a job, I like to just say, "Hey, morning, can you do this, please?" And he would always start his mornings with, "Hey, good morning, Marina. How are you doing today?" And I would be like, "This is pointless interaction because you don't really care how I'm doing. Like, we need to get the work done." So I would then say, "Could you do this?" And oftentimes I would start the conversation with, "Hey, morning, Chris, can you do this?" And he would say, "Good morning, Marina. How are you doing today?" And I also found this in Mexico while looking for an apartment. I messaged my realtor saying, "Hey, Happy New Year, Nacho. Are there any apartments?" And he said, "Hi, Marina. Happy New Year. Was your New Year is very good?" And first of all, it makes me feel very rude, uh, as in like I should have started with that. But we all know that this is just fluff. Like, we need to get to the point. But what the most I would say frustrating thing for me is when someone messages me and says, "Hey, Marina," and that's it. And
Yeah.
then oftentimes, I'll be very honest, oftentimes I don't even answer. I'm like, "Listen, you want to say something, just say it, because, hey, Marina, how are you?" It's like, what do you want? What is that? So it's very much a difference in culture. There's no right or wrong, but I do agree that like if you're efficient in your communication, you get things done faster. But in certain cultures, that's considered rude. And so I can imagine, I don't know how it is in Brazil, but for example, in a lot of Middle Eastern countries, it's common to call for work purposes and to say, how's your family? How is your health? Is everything okay? Are you doing well? And only then, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, you get to the actual work conversation.
Yes, 100%. At work, I feel that some people they do it, especially to me or to other foreigners, just because they don't know, but not because they are actually interested in knowing how was your weekend or something. They are just asking because they don't know how it is for us or it's polite at work. But I don't feel that they care.
That's it. So that there is a difference between actually having a deep conversation or someone that actually cares about how I'm doing versus, oh, we need to do this dance in order to get to the meet. And I don't want to do the dance if I know that it means nothing. So in a way, even though I came to Canada when I was 12, I'm still very Eastern European at heart, is that I don't like fluffy conversations. And I think, and tell me what you think about this, but I think the difference with, let's say, directness in countries like Germany, the Netherlands, and maybe like Poland, Russia, Ukraine, is that our directness with like more the Eastern European bloc is that, and the Balkans as well, is that we get right, like we like to go deep into the conversation. It's not always about efficiency. It's more about not wanting to stay on the superficial level. So you'll see a lot of people, they go very deep into conversation and they don't like small talk for that reason.
Yes, 100%. I live with a Belarusian woman, and I know that. And on the other hand, I still, especially as a polyglot, I want to try to practice languages, interact with people, get to know different people. And we have this cultural shock at home because getting in the elevator, I want to talk with the neighbor. And if the neighbor said to me "Good morning" in Polish with Russian accent, I want to ask, "Where are you from? Are you from Belarus? Or from Ukraine? From Kazakhstan?" I want to know. And she's like, "Why are you talking to him? You don't even know him." Like, and she says sometimes, "I don't even talk to people I know. Like if I meet them on the street, why are you talking to people you don't know?" And these things are very different when it comes to my culture and um, Slavic culture, right? And I also feel that Brazilians, if you are very direct with Brazilians, we take it personal, and it's hard. And I remember that I also took personal when I arrived in Poland. At work, I remember my manager said something to me that was quite rough, very direct about work, and I thought, wow, it was rude. But the next message was a meme or something, and I noticed, oh, it's not personal. He just tried to transmit a message in the most efficient way. And I noticed that people enjoyed that thing. I remember I had this issue that I couldn't connect with people from work, and someone gave me an advice: you want to connect with them, go to the bar with them. And then I went, and then I saw that they like to sit, like drink and talk. And then was the first time that I had a deep conversation with the guys from work, from my first job. And you really get like about like, personal, about different things. And of course alcohol has an importance here in the in the culture, socially, but they like to go deeply. But I feel that one difference between Germanic people and Slavic people when it comes to being direct, that Slavic people are not very direct when it comes to feelings,
Mm.
while Germanic people, I feel that they are much more like in a relationship, um, or even between friends. Sometimes in a relationship, a person will give signs or will tell something through the lines, among the lines. For example, the girl will buy flowers to show to the guy that he's not buying enough flowers. You know, this kind of things that I feel that a Germanic person probably would say, like, "I would like you to buy me flowers more
That's
often."
interesting. I think this is when it comes
And
to relationships with women specifically, is it not? Yeah.
yeah, I feel so. And I also feel that this is my impression here, according to my experience, that Slavic men, they have a little bit of hard time expressing their opinions with words, even among friends, because we are used in my culture to touch each other, to hug, to say to the friends that, oh, I really like you, you're really important to me. You say even I love you to a friend. And among Slavic guys, I don't see that often. And when you do that, sometimes you send an emoji of a heart or something like that. They sometimes you see that they don't know how to react when it comes to emotions. And this was is also a shock for me, because Of course, Brazil is in the other extreme of
Mm.
how we are displaying emotion all the time for everyone, but uh, it's it took a while for me to adapt and to understand how they see things, and to say the things in a way that they will understand and they will not be confused.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. So I think for men, you touched upon a really interesting point. I think it's that macho culture, but I mean, so Brazil also has that, but in a different way. And so it's kind of
Hmm.
feminine. You don't express your emotions. You should be the tough guy. I think for women, what happens is that because we have such strong gender roles, I can imagine your Belarusian girlfriend, she wants you to guess that that's what she wants because as a man, you should know. So a lot of times I feel like they want the man to read their mind and to be. Um, we had this. I would like to bring up this experience that I had with my Dutch ex boyfriend, where I was struggling. We were walking at one point, and I remember I was wearing heels. We are living in Portugal. It was very very difficult to walk in heels because of the cobblestones, and I remember I had wanted him to guess that he should have given me his hand. But I didn't say anything because he should know, right? That's the mentality that we have. And afterwards, he said, "Why didn't you just tell me?" Because in the Netherlands, a woman would just say, "I want X," like because they're a lot more confident in talking about what they need and what they want. I think whereas like maybe Slavic
Hmm.
girls, I think it's maybe not considered very attractive to be very direct with what you expect from the guy, and so maybe she's giving you hints in that way. But it is very interesting. I think like Slavic women are very emotional, whereas like men are very withdrawn emotionally, like very very stoic. So you have that difference, whereas in Brazil everyone is very emotional and everyone's very open with that, and it's yeah, very much just like a difference in culture for sure. um yeah, these are very very interesting differences, and again, like for anyone listening, there's no right or wrong. It's very much just a cultural awareness thing. Because but I have speaking of being rude in Poland, I have experienced a couple of instances where people were genuinely rude, and I don't know if you have any of the experiences that you'd like to share in terms of like customer service, which is not very much a thing there. What is customer service?
Well, it's horrible,
Cus-
horrible.
Customer
It's
anger is more like it. We
yeah.
were in Gdansk, and my friend and I were checking
Mhm.
into a hotel, into an Airbnb. And the man at reception, he basically was just, he was in the worst mood. He was like an older Polish man, just, in the worst mood ever. And so we're checking in, and he's like, and my friend asked, "So there is a deposit. Do we get it back at the end?" And he said, "Only if you do everything okay, you get it back, but maybe you don't get it back." And he started yelling at us. And I, being very much a Canadian Karen, I got really angry and I said, like in Canada, you'd be fired for this because he was yelling at us, just being slamming things. And he said, "I don't care. You shut up."
Mhm.
And imagine speaking like this in North America to a customer, like we could leave a really bad review. And so we had this really terrible experience. We slammed the door and we talked to the man, another man who was working in the same building. And the man said, "Yeah, this guy was probably in a really bad mood. I mean, today," he said, "I'm in a very good mood, but sometimes I'm in a bad mood as well. So maybe I could have acted similarly to that." And I was like, it doesn't matter
Mhm.
what your mood is, it's customer service. So this is,
Yeah.
yeah, this was one of the incidents that I've experienced in Poland.
Yeah, I feel the same. Service is always a weird experience for me here, because I heard, especially working in like support, for example, Polish people saying phrases like, "I'm not paid to smile. I'm not paid to think." And there's a typical Polish store here that's opening when usually non-usual times. It's called Żabka, and we know this place as usually we are not treated well there. And in the beginning, I thought it was because I'm a foreigner, and then I realized that no, they treat everyone equally. Everyone they treat like this, and it took a while for me to realize like that there's no service culture of trying to be nice, of smiling, or having a small talk. And especially in Warsaw, I think in Warsaw probably is the top of this culture of we don't have time. Like Polish people, I nie mam czasu. I don't have time for talk. I don't have time for you. Go quickly. Um, and it's a little bit frustrating sometimes, because you are having a nice time in a restaurant, for example, you are happy, and then there's someone who makes zero effort to explain something to you, and it's quite complicated, especially when you come from a very different culture that you're not used to things this way. And I never understood what's the point of doing it like that. And so I decided that always when I go to a place and I see a nice service, I leave a tip, because it's not common. If I appreciate, I always tell the person, this the service was amazing, thank you, I'm leaving a tip, because it's not common.
People can smile to you if they feel like it. I've had really great interactions in markets where people are very, like, older ladies were really sweet to me. I don't know if it's older Polish men or what. Like, I don't know what's the grudge that they have, or maybe I just got lucky that way. But I had another instance where I got yelled at in the train because I was in the wrong seat. The guy went in and just started yelling to me in Polish. And I joked to the customers, Polish smile, right? And then they started laughing. Actually, they were good sports. But he was just incredibly rude, but he did walk me to my new seat, and then he was nice. So it was just kind of, you don't know what to expect. It's, if they're in a bad mood, they're in a bad mood.
But I feel that, for example, in this case, is a little bit of not understanding that you are a foreigner, that you don't know the rules. In a country like Austria, I feel that they understand that, oh, you probably are not from here, so you don't know what you're doing, don't know the social rules here or how things work. So they have a little bit of comprehension or empathy towards you. But when it comes to Poland, the fact that they are not used to foreigners, they don't even think that you don't know what you're doing in this culture, and they just react like that, like, or sometimes people even can ask, are you stupid, what are you doing, or in I feel that's a little bit of lack of contact with foreigners. Maybe I feel that younger generation see it in a little bit different way, uh, because they understand more cultures. They, especially the ones that were born and raised in the European Union, they see it in a
Yeah, I
different
agree. I
way, I
think it's the
believe.
older generation more that is more like that. And I agree with you that Warsaw is, compared to Krakow, when I was there, I definitely noticed a difference. Krakow people were a little bit, even, interviewing on the streets, Krakow was easier. Warsaw people were more in a rush. So I noticed even that difference within Poland, how different people were. Um, and you had mentioned as well to me that you'd worked with Germans and French people, and you've noticed something within the working culture of those two. What was it?
Yeah. So I had a work job at IT. So I was doing IT support for a company from the US, but our clients were from was a company, but we work with Germany, not Germany, but the German-speaking countries and France. And doing the same job for both of them and seeing the differences was very interesting, because we could see how they both reacted in different ways. So a German customer always tried to do everything he or she can before calling you and telling that he has a problem or she has a problem. And when the person calls, the person has already everything with details. Look, I've tried that, it didn't work, I have this issue. A French person, no. And it's like, sometimes they even say in a way that seems like a joke, very dramatic, like, I have a small issue. Said, oh, what's going on? I cannot work at all. So, but this is not a small issue, and it's very dramatic. And French people sometimes they report you, they give you very bad rates. But on the other hand, German people, when you solve an issue, it's like, okay, thanks, and you did your job, nothing more than that. But French people, very often they were happy because you did your job well. They were, oh, thank you very much. Or after you solved the issue, they were very thankful towards you. While Germans, no, you just did your job. So the way they treat clients it is in a very different way. Like French people, very impatient, um, very dramatic. But on the other hand, they appreciated very much your help at the end. While Germans, very pragmatic. At the end, you just did your job.
There is a stereotype for a reason that Germans are more pragmatic and organized, and they go by the rules. And I've noticed this as well in Austria as well. Whereas French people are definitely a lot more critical, but also the Latin culture of, like, expressing your emotions, the highs and the lows of it, is more present. And that's very interesting that you notice those differences, because I can imagine working in Germany and working in France, you run into that as well. Yeah, it's I remember I had a quick story where I was like flying out of Austria, and because it was COVID, I wasn't allowed to fly through the US because of whatever reason. And I tried to reason with Austrian authorities to say, like, look, what am I supposed to do? I don't have another flight. And their response was, this is the regulation. And they wouldn't bend, they wouldn't try to communicate with me. I was thinking, like, if this had happened, let's say in North America, they would have been a lot more reasonable. At least we could have had a conversation. But here was like trying to work a computer system that was just like, this is the code and that's about it. And I called United, and the lady on their line, she was this American woman. She's like, oh, I totally understand, honey. Yeah, okay, let me see what I can do. And I was like, thank you. I will give you my unborn son, because I feel like I totally appreciate what it's like to deal with someone who at least wants to hear you out. But so there's pluses to the rule culture, which I think like everything works well. But the minus is that is not a very human interaction oftentimes. It's like, yes, no, okay, the end.
It looks like AI, right? That is following the rules just exactly how it is. And yeah, even I always tell, I was talking today with my ex coworker from France, and I was telling him, like, I mean, my time with working with French people was sometimes very stressful. I learned a lot, was very interesting, but it was never boring. And also it gave me a lot of material for stand-up comedy, but it was a very interesting experience for me. It was not just like, these are the rules, it has to be done like that, and that's all. No. And sometimes they were also curious, like, oh, you speak French, but you have an accent, but your accent is not like African. That's usually the others were from Africa. Where are you from? How do you speak French? How did you learn it? And they were curious. Germans usually were never asking this kind of questions while solving an issue, while waiting, for example.
Yeah, I think for you, I mean, you've mentioned to me that you don't feel 100% like a stereotypical Brazilian, that maybe um I guess you mentioned also that are you more introverted? Was that a thing or not really?
No, I'm very extrovert, and very communicative. While my girlfriend is completely the opposite. She jokes that you have this people who are extrovert, people who are introvert, and Belarusians. They are extremely introvert, but it's a challenge. It's something interesting that we have. But I feel that sometimes people, not only my girlfriend, but some people here, they feel a little bit overwhelmed with me. That I'm talking all the time, that I'm making jokes, and they feel like, okay, can you shut up a bit? It's a little bit too much.
It's interesting. When I was in Poland, I had a Belarusian taxi driver, Uber driver, and I told him, like, man, Polish people are so miserable. I even made that reel where everybody's just like looking miserable, and he's like, "You think they're miserable? You should come to Belarus."
Yes.
But so you and your girlfriend, you have been together for how long?
Well, 1.5 year.
1.5 year. And what were some of the, I mean, you mentioned some of the cultural differences that you've experienced along the way. Were there
Mhm.
others that you haven't mentioned?
Wow, I we have many actually, and I think our communication is good, so we are able to realize them and improve and find a way to communicate. But the Brazilians don't say no, we have for a long time these situations that I was asking, what do you think about going to this restaurant this day? Like, they have, I don't know, sales or something, and she was saying, we'll see, okay. So, okay. And then I was, how about this place? I don't know, we'll see, okay, okay. And then when it was arriving close to the day, she was like, did you make that reservation? I was like, no, you said we will see. And we will see in Brazil means no, I don't want. But we'll see for her is like, we'll see. Maybe it's a possibility. And for me, I haven't thought about that, because that's how we say no sometimes in Brazil. We'll see. Let's schedule, but let's schedule is not, yes, in Brazil. And it took a while for me to realize that it was literal. Okay, we will see. It's a possibility. Also, another cultural shock that um, I think that everyone who is not Slavic that is dating a Slavic woman has the things about flowers. Because in Brazil, my generation, we are not used to give flowers, especially not often. And my girlfriend, when I met her, she told me that flowers are not a gift; they are an obligation. And in the beginning, it was kind of, I give her flowers often, but I still do not understand the thing about flowers. I just give because she likes. And there is also like this big stereotype here that the Slavic women, they take pictures smelling the flowers like in the tree, or the pictures of the big bouquet. In the Brazilian culture, we don't understand this, like why flowers are so important. But I do because she likes. I still don't understand that, for example.
Yeah, I had a
It's
Ukrainian girlfriend, and she used to make fun of it. She's like, "Let's take photos like Ukrainians," and it would be like some flowers in the back. It'd be like pulling the flowers to your face and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, "This is the most typical like Ukrainian." Well, like in Eastern Europe in general, there is a big thing with flowers for sure. It's any Slavic girl, like she would love flowers, and I feel like that
Mhm.
tradition is going away in most of the world, but we still have that, and I'm not really sure why either. It's just a thing. We
I have a
definitely do that.
funny story about flowers. Well, first time I tried to buy flowers, I had never been to a flower shop myself. So I went and I asked the girl, "Can you help me? I need to buy flowers. I've never done that. What do you recommend me to buy?" And she gave me these long red roses. And when I arrived at these long red roses, the face was like, "Hmm." And then I received after some time a message from her friend saying like, "Red roses? Seriously? You couldn't even think about something less like less typical? Didn't have creativity?" And I was like, "Wow, like I don't know." And then I started realizing, okay, it's nice to ask, "Oh, what kind of flowers you like?" Every woman likes different flowers, but for me, it was something completely new. But my girlfriend understood really well, like that. I had no idea. It was my first time doing that, but it's for still I don't understand, but I was trying to ask her, do you like this? How can you improve? Or trying to see like what she likes, when she see a flower shop, what kind of things she pays attention to, and then okay, I will buy it like this next time. But in my culture, it doesn't exist, the flower thing. And I think also a very big difference we have in Belarus and Brazilian. I feel that Belarusian women or Slavic women appreciate something different than Brazilian women, in the sense that manners are very important. And there is even this word in Russian, adekvatny. So, on
Adequate.
adekvatny. Yeah, like in Brazil, I feel that we do not pay attention so much about that. And I remember my girlfriend telling me, "Oh, you are very romantic." And in the Brazilian definition of romantic, I'm not romantic. I don't say so many nice things, but for her, the fact that I organize things, I make her. She doesn't need to think so much about everything is ready. I take care of the stuff, and I give the flowers and do these things. For her, it's romantic, and I was surprised. Like, I'm not romantic. What are you saying? And then it's interesting that they appreciate that. Why I think in Brazil women appreciate different things. And but something that I found very different talking with her about her friends is how there is a huge difference in the standards, the beauty standards for men and for women. Like for women, the woman has to be beautiful, and for the men, like seems like no, they don't care. The manners are more important. But there is this difference. I think in Brazil, it's more or less what you expect from both sides is more or less the same.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I think I recently did a video about it, Western versus dating Western and Eastern Europe, where I talk about actually the flowers and the appearance. And I think, and I forgot one point in that video, which was incredibly important, is that there's just more women than men. So you're essentially competing a lot more with women. And if everyone around you is beautiful, then you're and a men very quite average, actually, like very average. Maybe they're getting a little bit better. I'm not really sure. Maybe there's more like a gym culture, but in general, like we had a saying that I've mentioned in a few other videos, which is the man should be more beautiful than a monkey, shouldn't be more beautiful than a monkey, sorry. And that's, I'm sure your Belarusian girlfriend, she knows this saying. Like our parents used to say it. And even when it came to like relationship, we have this phrase like "свыкнется, слюбится." So it's like once you get used to him, you love him. It's very like very very um, kind of depressing saying. But I think for men, there are many sayings where it's like the man shouldn't be attractive, the woman should be. And you see this discrepancy in like the way people look and the way women look. I mean, women, there's a huge pressure to look beautiful. And when I was in Poland, Polish women, yes, but like definitely like the more Eastern you go, the more women put effort into appearance. So, yeah.
In Brazil, also, we have a lot of, I think, for the Slavic perception. Brazilian men probably are very metrosexual, I would say, because here I sometimes people ask me some questions that in Brazil I had never had to answer them, like why do you have earrings, or why do you shave your legs, like which in Brazil are kind of common things. No one will ask me this, why. And here I had to answer these questions for the first time, and was a little bit of a cultural shock. But usually men ask these questions. I would say women sometimes, but more often men.
I guess maybe there's like a discomfort with looking somewhat feminine or metrosexual or whatever, or they equate metrosexual with like feminine. I have noticed like when I was in Warsaw, there are quite a good number of decent looking men. At least we went to this district like by the water. I'm sure you know it, by the river, I think it is. Like where
Hmm.
all,
Yeah, Police.
yes, where all the parties are. So that was really nice. And my friend and I were like, I went with a Russian friend who lives in Barcelona. And so we went to Poland for the first time. We decided to meet in Warsaw. She's like, why did you choose Warsaw? Super random. But so we met in Warsaw and we went to this party and she's like, whoa, Polish guys look very different that like you'd imagine like what we think of like Eastern European guys. And then we go back and we see literally three men peeing in a row behind trees and there and she's like, there it is. That's what I was waiting for. But overall, she became depressed and she said, there's just way too many beautiful women here compared to the men. I don't like it. Then she went to France and she loved it because she felt like men were finally giving her the attention. But in Poland, like nobody was giving attention because there's just so many women. And now with Ukrainian women, even more, I think, beautiful women.
Yes.
So
Yeah, especially because with the war, most of people that came to Warsaw were women, and then the difference between the amount of women and men, it's even bigger now.
definitely. Um, how did living in Poland change you as a person? Or even how did living in Europe change you?
Well, 100%. I cannot even imagine how I would be if I wouldn't have come to Europe. Because I mean, I think every person has their own taste about what they want for their lives, the preferences. And for me, I find in Europe a lot of things that I like. The European values. I'm very connected with them when it comes to human rights, to the political system, the direction that um, Europe is going. For example, I'm vegan, and being vegan in Brazil is quite challenging. People don't understand, and in Poland, in Warsaw especially, it's quite easy. So I found myself in a place where I have so much cultural diversity, and I it's like endless. I can explore forever, and I feel that I still have a lot more to explore. I took a little bit from every culture, from the languages I was learning, from the people I've been meeting, from the countries I've lived in, and it's a whole different. Like Brazil as an ex-colony, we need to go, and we have been going through some process that Europe has gone already a long time ago, and it's rough. Sometimes if you are living there, you need to go through these things. And I decided that I wanted to live something different, and in Europe I could find it. So I feel that my values match more with their European values um, than actually the values that I see in Brazil when it comes to society, um, the diversity, European values, and so on.
Do you see yourself staying in Poland long term?
Well, I don't know the answer for that because I still haven't found a city that I like more than I like Warsaw. So for now, Warsaw has been my favorite city because still I have the element that is a challenge for me. I'm still learning a lot out of my comfort zone, but I really like the city. I got used to live with Slavic people. I still feel that I have a lot more to learn, and especially now I'm started like this career doing stand-up comedy, and I want to try it in Polish, in Russian. So I still have a lot more to learn here. So, but I can never say what will happen later, what life will take me to, where life will take me to. Because when it comes, for example, to languages, I feel the languages chose me more than I chose the languages. So I don't know what will happen, what will appear in my life. But so far, Warsaw has been my favorite place. And after 3.5 years, I feel that I created also a little bit of a feeling with the city, and I call it sometimes home. I think if you would ask me 1 year ago, I would not say that, but now I have a little bit of this feeling.
Okay, I think that's a great note to finish our podcast. So, thank you so much for taking part. Guys, if you enjoyed it, first of all, let us know what you thought about it, what points stood out the most. And I'm going to link his socials and his podcast underneath so you can go and check him out. And yeah, thank you so much. And it was really a pleasure to have you. We've been trying to kind of make this work for a little while, but it's always cool to talk to people that are not only following me, because I'm not some arrogant person, but to talk to someone who is also in the sphere of languages and like really thinking about all these cultural differences. I think this is it for me. It's a pleasure to know that people like this follow the channel as well. That really means a lot to me.
Yeah, 100%. For me, before learning any language, I check the video from the country. I want to learn some cultural features that I need to know before what to know before you go. So I want to know what I need to have in mind before interacting with people, and it has always helped me. So I'm not only a fan, but it has been a very useful resource for me. So I'm very glad to have this opportunity to be here today.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, guys, stay tuned for next week's podcast where we feature another country. And thank you, Eliseu, and have a wonderful evening in Poland.
You too.
You too. Bye bye.